Okay, the front panel right here that comes down, we'll go ahead and indicate where that goes. It kind of tucks in right there, back out, and then back in again. And on this front panel, what happens is you get a little indentation and then it gets lighter, and then you get a little indentation and it gets lighter. And you get this movement in the fabric with the shadow. Very important when you're doing a denim. And I just kind of wiggle my brush. I press harder and then I lighten up. Press harder, lighten up. Harder, lighten up. And this will give me a change in the color. Each time I do that, it gives me a little shadow. Come over here and do the same thing, so it kind of comes down this whole front piece. Come up here on the collar, it's the same thing here. There's a shadow in here and there's a seam. So just be on that seam. There's a little bit of a shadow on the collar and there's a seam here. And again, right beyond the seam, there's a little shadow there. And then you want to do the same thing right here. You want to give it a little variation in color. Just like we did right here and here and over there. The pocket has the same thing. So come along there, come along that pocket. Try to go this way so you can see. And fluctuate your color so you get that Levi look. I'm bouncing my brush to create that look there. Now, let's talk a little bit about pulling highlights back out after you've put shadow on. When you do your burnt umber underpainting, sometimes it's necessary and you want to have a little highlight. Excuse my reach, I just need to get a paper towel. You want to have a little highlight, say along this edge. So you can take a little small brush or even a wipeout tool, or sometimes I even use a pencil eraser. I'm going to dampen it just slightly with a little oil and then wipe the oil back off just so it's a little bit wet. And then I'm going to come right along here. I'm going to work that brush along there and pull some of that paint out of there. And what that'll do is it'll put back in a highlight that maybe I've lost along the way. That is not doing as well as I'd like. What I'm going to do is use thinner instead. The oil wouldn't let it come off, you know. You have to keep wiping the paint out of your brush. Another thing that you can do is you can use a little Q-tip depending on how sharp you want that highlight to be. Oops, getting my hand in your way again. There we go. See how that creates that little highlight? And then the same thing if you have a place where there's supposed to be a button. She's got some white snaps or buttons, that there's actually snaps on here. And I've put burnt umber there. What I can do is I can just use that damp brush and put it back in where I need it to be. Just by pulling that paint off of there. If the fabric is facing towards you, these will be perfectly round. If the fabric is angled away, it'll be more oblong like this. Okay, let's talk a little bit about wrinkles, but before we do, I want to talk to you about sweater fabric. This is going to be a sweater, and when you're painting a sweater, the important thing to do is make sure that every edge is fuzzy. Fuzzy, fuzzy, fuzzy. All of these edges, everywhere where there's a shadow, everything has to have a real blur to it. That's what will keep it looking like a sweater. So it's really important that you do that and keep those edges really soft. This sweater, as you'll see when we move on, has a pattern on it. Don't worry about the pattern. Just go ahead and paint it in pretty much flat, especially if it's just a little pattern, and this one does have just a little small design, and I will show you that later. As far as his beret goes, the beret has a stripe to it. I am going to show you how to do the striped fabric, but what I want to show you on that with regard to the burr number underpainting is, even if your fabric is striped, again, try to see beyond the stripe and paint in the shadows that are underneath those stripes. We talked about this earlier in the tape. The stripe will camouflage the shadow and it makes it harder to see where your shadows are. So you kind of have to look beyond the stripe and see where the fabric folds and bends and place those shadows in there. It's a little hard to do, but with a little practice you'll be all right. Anyway, I'll show you the striped fabric later. We'll deal with putting the color on. But when you're doing any kind of a stripe or a plaid, at this point, just put your shadows in. Don't worry about putting a striping in, okay? It'll be easier if you do it this way. I wanted to paint this man because I wanted to show you wrinkles. When we paint wrinkles on a portrait, it's real easy to get the wrinkles hard. And in other words, you kind of create a feeling like there's rivers or streaks or lines, not wrinkles, but like cracks in the skin. And you really want him, even though he's wrinkled, you want him to look soft. The skin needs to stay soft. So the important thing to do is when you're putting the wrinkles on, to make sure you keep them soft. Again, just like in all underpainting, you want to make sure you build in your basic shadows. He has a basic shadow right here. Don't even deal with wrinkles yet. All I did was I indicated where the eyes would go and the nose and the inside of the mouth would go. But you notice I didn't put any of the lines in, any of the wrinkles in with my little tiny brush. We'll put those in later. If I do put them in with my tiny brush, again, I'll get a hard look. And it's gonna look like he's got little cracks in his face. Okay, he's got shadow there. His hat creates a nice shadow back up here. He's got lots of shadow in that ear. Interesting tidbit about ears is they never stop growing. So anybody with big ears, we're in trouble. Basic shadow here on the face. It's just a darker area in there. He's a lot darker underneath his nose on his upper lip. This whole upper lip has a shadow to it and just a general shading under here. He's darker on his chin, right underneath where his lip is going to be. You notice I didn't outline his lips. It's very important not to outline the lips. You'll have him looking like he's wearing lip liner. He has a shadow on the bottom of his chin. Again, I'm using my nice big brush so that I keep everything soft. Soft, 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 soft. Put a little more shadow on his forehead here. And then let's go ahead and start building in wrinkles. He has a wrinkle that comes across his forehead here, and I'm just going to do a little soft line. He has another one that comes across there. He has another one that comes across here. Be really careful. There's one thing that will kind of trip you up if you're not careful. A lot of older people have a heavy crease here on the face. You do want to put that in, but you have to keep it soft. And the reason is, anytime you do a vertical line between the eyes, it'll make the person look like they're angry. So you have to be really careful to keep that soft. If you get it on there and your person looks mad, then that's why. It's a vertical line that will do that. Vertical line between the eyes will really give you a hard time. So be really cautious of that. It's very easy to get tripped up. You're almost better off to leave it off than to put it on and have your person looking angry. You got a beautiful portrait of Grandpa and he looks like he's furious, so that wouldn't be too good. But I'll show you ways that you can counter that if that does happen in your painting. Okay, there's more shadow here under the nose. His upper lip is almost non-existent. He does have one, but it just barely shows, so I'm going to shade it in with just a little bit of color there. His lower lip is dark right in here as it rounds back into the mouth. And then there's a shadow on the skin beneath the lower lip, and that's what makes that lip show up. And he's got a wrinkle there and one there. And he's got one here. He's got a dimple right there. And one right here. He has wrinkles around his eyes, lots of them. He's got some nice dark right up in here. And then lots of wrinkles under here. And I'm just going to go ahead and start phasing these in. Because I'm using a nice large brush, they are going to stay soft. I don't have to worry. But I know what you're doing. You're grabbing that little dinky brush and thinking, well, I'll do that, but I'll do it with a small brush. You might be able to do it, but be really cautious because it is so easy to get it hard. I want to keep those wrinkles soft above all else. That wrinkle kind of fades out over here. This wrinkle has a little place where it kind of looks like it wants to connect. And then there's shadow over here. And here on the nose. The nose tends to not get too wrinkly. There might be some up there at the bridge of the nose, but down here it doesn't get too wrinkly. The nose keeps growing too, by the way. Teeth inside the mouth, as they round back, should get a little bit darker. In the original, you'll see that his teeth don't, they look like they're capped real white. So I'm going to go ahead and soften them down. I think it'll be prettier. And as you look at your photo book, you'll notice that. You can kind of make a little mental note of that. See what I'm talking about. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Let's put a little shadow inside this ear. My big brush. There. And here.